one conversation and now you're sending me a DocuSign or a signable form for me to do. And we haven't, I don't know you enough. I'm not going to just sign this over to you. So I think that sending it too early is just about the equivalent of meeting somebody in a bar and 5 minutes later getting down on one knee and proposing to them. That's just, you're not going to do that. If your sales language hasn't been updated in at least 12 months, then you need to go back and take a look at that because it's outdated. Our buyers have changed. What they want has changed. And so we need to make sure that we're actually speaking to the customer.
Everybody talks about their pricing. Everybody talks about their customer service. It doesn't really matter that you have in-house maintenance unless you're connecting it to something that matters to them.
You can sell whatever your management rate is as long as the value is there behind it.
Welcome to another edition of Outbound on Air. I'm Ben Smith, one of your hosts, and I'm joined by co-host Kristen Lopez. Kristen, how are you this morning?
I am doing great, Ben. But, as we look at the calendar, we're coming up on halfway through the year, if you can believe it. I mean, we are in month 5, but it's almost month 6, halfway through the year. And I think that raises some questions. Are we where we want to be in business? Not just me and you, but the listeners are where you want to be in your business. So that is the question that I've been noodling around in my head this morning. What comes to mind for you whenever you think halfway through the year? Should we be halfway through our goals? Where should we be at?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it's an important question, right? Because first off, you should be looking at that, right? Don't wait till November, December to determine that you're off track, right? You want to, hopefully people are proactive in their thinking about this. But I think the challenge with this question, Kristen, is the reality is there could be a number of things. If you're not where you want to be, there could be a number of things going on. But how do you pinpoint that, right? And for some folks, it might feel like, man, do we need to blow up the whole thing and start over? Or dump a bunch of money into some other lead source, right? Like your mind can kind of go to the extremes when you're not getting the results you want. So I think what we can do in this episode is really help people kind of pinpoint a couple areas where they can start. So as you're thinking about this question, right, Kristen, where would you start? What's the first thing you would look at if we weren't getting the results that we wanted to at this point in the year?
Absolutely. So I think the first thing, and something that I'm always surprised by, is do we have an actual forecast of numbers broken down per month of where we want to be? I think it's really easy at the beginning of the year to set a target or a direction of where we're wanting to grow towards, whether that's revenue, that's total door count, whatever that looks like. But have we taken that and broken that down month by month to really know if we are on track or off track? I've been having conversations over the last couple of weeks where people are like, things are just going really bad. And then we look at the numbers and they're not, but we trick ourselves into thinking that they are because we don't have an actual plan or the numbers that we have set up, the way that we were thinking about it in the year maybe was a little bit off. So something I want us to chat about first is just the seasonality of what we experience in property management and where we're heading towards in the next couple of months, where we're going to have peak leasing season and peak, PMA season, peak time for people to be making a decision on property management. And so whenever we look coming into the summer months, it's important for us to then, whenever we look at our numbers for the year, weight the next couple of months a little bit heavier than we weighted Q1 or even Q4. So if you're looking at your forecast and the easiest one is 120, right? I want to do 120 doors this year. Easiest math breaks down to 10 a month. I've not ever seen a company do a true 10 every single month. It really looks like, 4 in January, 5 in February, 6 in March, and then we go up 12, 14, 15 throughout the summer months, and then it tapers back down at the end of the year. So I think just making sure that we have a true plan in place is priority number 1 for me, so that we can know the direction of where do we need to come in and make adjustments. Because let's say we look at it and we do find that there's an issue. Now we can go in more precisely, because I think a lot of times our lizard brain wants to just blow everything up and start from scratch and say, everything is terrible. I need new people. I need a new system. I need new everything. But in reality, do you?
Question you kind of ask yourself is like, well, is it actually bad? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you don't want to go fixing a bunch of stuff if I think the easiest exercise you mentioned is look at prior year and what you did in those months the prior, right? And so like, hey, if last year you did actually have a great Q1 and this year Q1 was really bad, then yeah, okay, like there's something going on there. But if you're looking at it and you're like, oh, wait a second, actually our results this year are not all that different from last year, right? And then I think you
Mhm.
think about like was there something we intended to do differently? Did we invest in some sort of new tool, new lead gen? Maybe our salesperson was pretty green last year and this year we're expecting them to, be a little bit more experienced. I think you want to take those factors into account really before you start doing anything else, because it's really easy to tell a story in your head that's not actually supported by real data. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think one of the other just things that the extremes I would say
Mhm.
here that our brain goes towards is everything is bad, number one. Number two, oh my gosh, we just need more leads. We
That's
need more leads, Ben. How can I just go out and dump a whole bunch of money? How can I generate more leads? And my gut always goes towards, do you? Like, do you need more leads? And so I'm curious there on the folks that come and they say, Ben, I just need a whole lot of more
right.
leads. What's the first step? What do we start to look at there? Or do we just go ahead and make the investment?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. There's the short answer. I think it really starts with the sales
Thank you.
process, Kristen. And yes, I have heard that a lot from people. We need more leads, right? And that may ultimately be the case. But the thing that my mind goes to is like, all right, before we think about that, what are we doing with the leads that we have? And so I think taking a really critical view of the sales process and understanding, one, the most obvious KPI, which is like close rate. Like, okay, we get 10 leads a month, but how many do we actually sign, right? Because if the close rate is pretty low, getting you more leads is actually a pretty expensive and inefficient way of trying to tackle this problem, right? You get 10 more leads, but then if you're only going to get one or two of them, then you're spending a
What's the
lot of money
point?
for not a lot. What I always did when I was managing salespeople that were not in a great position, like there was room for improvement. What I always like to look at in the sales process is where are we losing people, right? So if let's say we've got a really low close rate of like 10%, right? We're getting one out of every 10. Okay, well, what's happening? Are we not getting those 10 on the phone to begin with? Are we getting them on the phone, but then they're not moving forward? Are we sending agreements out, but then they're not getting signed? Right? Because I think when you actually get granular enough to understand where folks kind of drop off in the process, that sort of reveals a lot of answers to you. And that allows you to kind of dig in and say, okay, well, our issue is that we're actually talking to very few of the leads that come in the first place. The questions that immediately come to mind for me are, well, how quickly are we reaching out to them? And then how much are we following up with them? Because it's pretty low hanging fruit to look at that and say like, oh, well, yeah, we're reaching out to them twice. I'm the business owner, so I've got a lot going on. So I try to get back to them within 24 hours, and I'm not really good about putting stuff in the CRM. So I kind of forget about them. I maybe follow up once or twice, but then they just kind of sit there. So, and by the way, that stuff is completely common. I'm sure you see that as well. So I think before you go and make some sort of broad strokes change, really where you want to start is looking at your process and seeing what is actually happening within it, and
Yeah.
what might be the glaring issues with what we're already doing. So curious your take on that, especially as PM path builders, process experts.
So, whenever we look at the sales process, I think it is important to understand not only just the process that we're following, but also the salesperson or yourself, whoever is carrying out this process. Because I think that a lot of times what we want to look for is what's best practice? What is the standardization? What is it that I should be striving towards? And I have found some commonality between companies as far as just generalized in process. We have a new lead stage and we send an agreement at the end of it. What happens in between there, I think, is up to your market and the person who's the one doing this process. So as we're looking at the sales process here and we're seeing something that's not working, my question is, what was working before and what have you stopped doing? A lot of times for salespeople, we get into a rut maybe, or we want to find the thing that is the easiest to do. So a lot of times the first thing to go is on-site consultations. And so the question is, do we need them? Is always my first question. Do we need on-site consultations, or are we closing fine without them? And if we're here having this conversation, we're probably not closing fine, right?
Sure.
So just making sure that we can look at, if at one point this was working really well, what did we stop doing? And if we haven't stopped doing anything, then that leads me to think that, okay, we need to change something in the process, whether that is the actual process or it's the messaging that we're sending out. Maybe your messaging is too generalized. Maybe you are just not connecting with people or really talking to your ideal customer anymore. If you're, in my opinion, if your sales language hasn't been updated in at least 12 months, then you need to go back and take a look at that because it's outdated. Our buyers have changed. What they want has changed. And so we need to make sure that we're actually speaking to the customer. So as it applies to the process there's a number of different factors that we want to take a look at. But absolutely, we need to figure out where the drop off is because that's the piece that we need to go in and fix. So new lead to first phone call to second step, whether that's a second phone call or a consultation to agreement. That's kind of the basic structure that we look at here. And each one of those has a different tweak that we can make to it to make it most efficient. So as it relates here to our closing and that idea that we need more leads, I think it comes from people in the industry bragging almost about how many doors that they are closing. But I think number of doors that people are closing is just such a small piece of the story because, yeah, somebody may have closed 50 doors in 1 month, but their closing percentage is 10%. And those 50 doors that they close is a deal that they have been working on for 8 months, or it's a deal that somebody else started working on and they just picked it up at the finish line. And now they're saying that they close these doors. So whenever we look at the amount of doors, I don't want anyone to feel intimidated by what anyone else is doing. Because I think the real metric that matters here is what is the total conversion rate that we are getting within our process. What I try to aim for people is 30 to 40%. That is where I want people to be at. A lot of times people are closing at 10 or 13%. Now, that's neither good, bad, or other. Closing percentage just is, right? However, where we want people to get towards is that 30 to 40%. And we do that by making sure that the process is designed not only just for the person who's going to be implementing this process and carrying it out, but for your customers. Are we actually saying the things that they want to hear? Is our message inviting them to a phone call strong enough for them to give us 10, 15 minutes? Or is it not? And if it's not, then we're not succeeding. So we don't need to go and dump, like you said, a whole lot more leads on top of that because it just isn't going to make sense.
Right. Well, I think you bring up a good point that I think we should probably say much more explicitly than we have, which is like, if all you're doing is tracking doors closed, like if that's your business development KPI, you're leaving a lot out there that could be helpful in understanding, right, what's actually happening. And so I think as I don't know, my vantage point, like as a business owner, you want to understand lead flow. You want to understand obviously how many you close, what that close rate percentage is. But I would also want to understand some things like, what is our sales cycle? Like how long does it take from when a lead initially comes in to when they sign with us? If you're not tracking those types of things, if you're not forecasting, right, like you're kind of flying blind a little bit with this stuff. So I don't know. Are there any other KPIs that you recommend that you think are really important to be able to kind of understand team performance, I guess?
I want to just touch on the sales cycle really quick because I think that that's an undervalued piece that I think a lot of people don't understand why that is so important. We want to look at our sales cycle because what that means is it's really your lag time from the time that you talk to leads to whenever they're
Right.
closing. So if your sales cycle is taking 90 days, that means February. So that means that as of today, the leads that you're closing, you generated those in February.
Yeah.
So that means the leads that you're generating today in May won't close until August is going to be whenever these leads are going to close.
Mhm.
So that's really important as we're looking at forecasting because we can't look at last month's leads and then say our closing percentage is going to be X percent of that. We're really looking 90 days backwards to figure out if we can close that. So figuring out what our sales cycle is helps us to be able to bring intelligence into our forecasting because now we can really judge success and failure. If we
Mhm.
have that longer sales cycle, we're going to feel like we're failing a lot because our numbers are smaller because we did not maybe generate as many leads in February as we're going to generate in May.
Right.
That means that May is going to be a smaller number of deals closed, whereas August is going to be bigger just because of the number of leads that we have coming in.
Mm.
So the sales cycle and the number of days it takes us to close is really, really important. And I think that's a seriously undervalued KPI that I don't see a lot of people
Yep.
tracking of just that average sales cycle. So that one is really important to me. And then also another big one is the number of agreements that we're sending out. I have some people that get really send happy with agreements and they're just sending them out there. And then we look at the numbers and we're like, wow, we have 27 agreements out for signing and we're closing 3 of them. So to me, that's a really big one because we think that we should, whenever we send out an agreement, we should have about 80 or 90% success once we send that agreement out to get it back. We should not be sending agreements out willy-nilly. It should just be whenever we are ready for them to be signed. So to me, agreement sent is a really big KPI for me for us to track because if we constantly have so many agreements out and they're not getting signed, that's a really big one. So I like to know how many phone calls we're doing within a
Mhm.
week and how many agreements we're sending out, how long our sales cycle is in our leads. Those are some of the biggest KPIs that I like to track because that gives us a good pulse check on how healthy our sales process is. The other one is our pipeline size.
Yeah.
How many deals do we have total in the pipeline?
Right.
Because if we look at our closing percentage and we have 50 deals in a pipeline, but our closing percentage is only 10, that means that we really only have 5 deals
Right.
in the pipeline. So we want to make sure that our pipeline is healthy as well so we can predict how many deals are going to come on board in the next 3 months. So operationally, if we need to make changes, we can because we can look at the health of our pipeline and say, we have a lot of big stuff coming, or,
Yeah.
oh, we don't, and we need to figure out what to do about that.
Right. Well, and I think too that just to illustrate again the importance of looking at things other than just stores closed, right? Like with the pipeline piece, somebody may have a ton of stuff that they're working on and they may have a great month and maybe they do hit that like 30-40% mark and you're like, holy smokes, we closed 25 doors. It's a new record for us. Like this is the new normal, right? Like this is what we expect every month now. Well, the reality is like, if you were to look at the pipeline, you may actually find, oh, well, yes, we had a great month, but now it is dry. Like we
Yes.
worked everything that we were working on to completion, and now we don't have anything behind it. So if that salesperson, like, and this is probably best illustrated for somebody that's doing like a lot of outbound, probably, right? It's
Mhm.
like, okay, if you're working a lot of deals, well, you don't have as much time to be hitting the phones or working your referral relationships, right? And so like the prospecting side falls off and now you're honestly, you're going to have a couple rough months probably because there wasn't anything behind it that was coming down the pipeline. I want to touch on something that you said, Kristen, and I think because you brought up the PMA scent thing, which I very much agree with. I too have run into people, property managers, folks that I've worked with in the past who are definitely like, oh, I have a conversation with someone, they seem mildly interested, I'm sending an agreement, right? My opinion is that actually does harm, but I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit. What sending an agreement too quickly, what does that actually do for someone that isn't ready or that you haven't done enough you haven't done enough discovery or value creation with.
Absolutely. I think that for some people, that's a complete turnoff. That's too assumptive that we've had one conversation and now you're sending me a DocuSign or something like a signable form for me to do. And we haven't, like, I don't know you enough. I'm not going to just sign this over to you. I think that sending it too early is just about the equivalent of meeting somebody in a bar and 5 minutes later getting down on one knee and proposing to them. That's just, you're not going to do that.
Yep.
And so we don't need to do that in the sales process. I believe that if you want to send a sample agreement out
Sure.
in property management, that is perfectly fine for us
Yep.
to do. Have it so that it's watermarked, it's a draft, they know that they're not signing it, and you're presenting it in a way to give them an opportunity to review our terms of our service. To me, that is perfectly acceptable. You can send that. Don't send that in your new lead stage. Okay, send that at least after the first conversation or before your on-site consultation. It's nuanced of when to send that, but don't send it right away. However, sending them a copy of the management agreement, perfectly acceptable. Let people review. This is a really big decision. So yes, let them see the contract. To send the actual signable contract should be done whenever you have actually had a closing conversation with them. So like, Ben, does this seem like this would be a good fit for you? When would you like to get started? When do we want to get the property live on the market? And one of my favorite questions is, hey, Ben, our agreements are actually set to expire in a 72-hour period. Is there any reason that you wouldn't be able to sign this in the next couple of days? But again, insert whatever date range feels comfortable for you. But that gives you the opportunity to actually close this person before you send out a management agreement.
That's right.
Because I think that, again, sending out the management agreement too early it's not correct. Like, and to ask them to sign it, it just doesn't make sense for the people. And they're going to get turned off because they're going to say, this person just thinks I'm going to sign after one phone call. And if they do, that could be a red flag. They're a little bit too eager to work with us. But the management agreement sent, we need to actually have a closing conversation before we are sending out the management agreement.
Yep. Yeah. I like what you said about like the 80-90% rule. Like, and that's probably a good question you should ask yourself and be honest with. Like, if I send this, is there an 80% chance that this person's going to sign within the next 3 days? And of course, you can't fully know. But if you've had one conversation with them, or, the amount of back and forth has been really light, right? They haven't asked a whole lot of questions, that sort of thing. Like, you haven't uncovered kind of why they're looking for property management. It's probably pretty safe to say that that thing is going to sit in their inbox, and then you're going to be refreshing your email, waiting to see when it comes through for a long time.
And I think that also weights your pipeline in the wrong direction, because you've skipped a lot of steps in between there, because you've gone straight from, in this scenario, straight from a new lead to an agreement sent. Now, how are you going to backtrack to fill all of that stuff in the middle, to do the rapport building, to ask the questions, to build the value? You've essentially devalued yourself by sending that agreement, because they don't need to have another conversation with you. They have your management agreement. And so there's no reason that they need to talk to you again. They're going to read it.
Right.
And a lot of times these management agreements are filled with language that, if not explained correctly, can be taken in the wrong way. It is filled with a whole bunch of different costs, which we will put in there as fees. So they're going to go through that and they're going to read all the math, but not understand that it's not all applied at once. So you're really devaluing your process, yourself, and your company by sending out the management agreement too early, because that person never needs to talk to you again. They don't have to have another conversation with you.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I think if you, especially in the case of somebody who wants to see the management agreement, I think that's great to send them kind of that non-signable version. But I always think you try to establish a next step beyond that. Hey, okay, I'll send this over to you. When would be a good time for us to talk through any questions that you have? Or, as a salesperson, the types of questions that people typically have. Cover those before they even come up. You know what I mean? I think there's some power in that, having that conversation where you're reviewing it together. You're not, there's going to be some people that are just like, hey, I appreciate that. I'm good. Just send it over. But when you're leaving the ball entirely in their court to kind of get back to you, you don't have any control anymore. Like, it is It is out of your hands, and you're hoping. You obviously follow up, but Kristen, talking about this, I think brings up kind of the natural next question. We're looking at our sales process. We're looking at gaps. We're looking at where are we potentially losing people. The next question that a business owner in particular might be thinking if they have a BDM is, do I have the right person? Right? Are we getting the leads? Is our volume there? But is the person we have having these conversations, are they actually the problem? Curious from your perspective, where do you start with that?
Absolutely. So the first place that I always like to start there is what we've just been talking about is process. Because a lot of times you can have the right person, wrong process. And so before I like to go blame someone first, I want to go look at the process and make sure that it's designed correctly. So let's make the assumption here that we have redefined the process, we've implemented new policies, and now maybe we have a little bit of resistance to the policies or resistance to the process. In that answer, we may not have the right person. But I think the first step there is some type of performance improvement plan for our salesperson.
Yeah.
But we need to make sure that we have defined exactly what are the outcomes that we are expecting them to achieve. And a lot of times I've had to scale back some expectations of some owners to where they're like, well, they should just be out closing, 175 doors every single month. And they should be working on Saturday and Sunday. And they should be doing this. And I'm like, okay, but you're paying them $40,000 a year. What you're paying is not matching your expectations. So let's dial this back a little bit. So making sure the expectations are there. And then once everything is aligned, then we go to that BDM and we say, these are the expectations that we need you to fall within. And if you don't, I'm sorry, this is not the best fit for you. This is not the best fit for us. And we're going to have to make other decisions. And so really just kind of laying out what those expectations are and measuring their performance against the expectations. And sometimes a BDM may have been working at a company for a long time and they just realize they don't like this person. Like this person we don't get along. I don't like this person. That's a different conversation. But if we're looking at outcomes, that's really the easiest way for me to be able to judge, do we have the right person in this seat? Are they reaching the outcomes that we are expecting? And if they're not reaching the outcomes, are they trying, right? Are they showing that effort? Because to me, if I've laid out a performance improvement plan and the BDM is not hitting like the number of deals that we want done or not hitting a certain metric, but they are putting in 100% every single day. And I believe that they would have the ability to get there. They just need a little bit more time. That's a different conversation. If they just give up and don't try, we have our answer right there. Then we know. But how do you approach that? I know you've managed tons of salespeople there. So how do you approach this situation?
Yeah, it's a tricky question, to be honest. The place that I've always started is with the effort side of things, right? Is this person engaged? Are they putting forth the effort? I think what you said about expectation setting is absolutely right. And especially early on, like if your salesperson is relatively new, like focusing on, I think we've talked about this on a previous episode, like focusing on the activity level. Hey, I know you're new. I know that this is going to take some time, but as far as what you're putting into it, here's kind of the inputs. You need to make this many calls. You need to reach out to this many realtors, right? Because that creates a very objective, way of looking at this, right? If I asked you to reach out to 100 for rent by owner leads in a week, right? It's pretty black and white. Did you do it or did you not do it? And of course, you have the CRM, you want to be able to double check this stuff if the person's essentially self-reporting. I think in general, setting the activity levels is going to give you an idea of engagement and effort, right? Like, are they doing what we're asking them to do? Because if the answer is yes, then now the conversation becomes, all right, well, how can I help you get better? Right? Like, is there additional training that we need? Is there something that is happening in the sales process that you're just particularly having a hard time with, or a certain objection you're getting a lot, right? I think that sort of stuff, that's all coachable, right? We can work through that
Absolutely.
stuff. But if the level of effort is not there, then I think that that's sort of, especially as it relates to like a performance improvement plan for someone, you're going to figure out pretty quickly if they really want to be there or not. And two, I think the other piece of it too, that again, this is like, now we're getting into the territory of things that are not black and white. It's like, is this person teachable? Like,
Right.
are they accepting feedback and then implementing that feedback? If the answer is yes,
Mhm.
great. Let's keep working together on that. If the answer is no, they're just kind of doing the same thing over and over again, and they're not really comfortable making changes to the approach, or they're not adhering to things we changed in the sales process, then I think that's more so where you have the problem. In my experience, Kristen, like, if somebody's just not, if they're not there, if they're kind of checked out, like, you're gonna figure that out pretty quickly if you're attentive. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But if you don't really, if you're so far removed from what's happening, it might take like, okay, like, wait, this is weird. We've had 3 really bad months in a row. I wonder what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, you need to be attentive to that earlier, right? You don't want to get through a couple months of bad results without trying to understand, like, all right, is this person really engaged in what we're doing here? Are they putting it
Mhm.
forth? So that's kind of the way that I think about it. It's not there's no like perfect way of doing it. I think the biggest piece is just you as a leader being engaged with what's going on, right? Don't Just because you hired a salesperson doesn't mean you now need to be completely hands off what's happening in your
Yeah.
in your growth department.
I'm curious your take on this, and this is just an observation, I would say, a feeling
Mhm.
that I have,
Yeah.
is that I think that a lot of our property management company owners feel like salespeople are just these kind of mythical creatures that you can't quite manage the same way. And so they're like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I'm not sure. Like, can I fire them? But they're such like nice people. They're likable. And we're just kind of stuck in this place to where if that was a property manager, you would 100% like fire this person. You would not allow this level of inconsistency when managing your properties, but we allow it when managing our salespeople. And so I'm curious if you have observed that and if you have any kind of feedback, advice for owners that find themselves in that situation of like, well, but they're salespeople. And I feel like that blankets a lot of things for people. Like they don't fill out their commission form, they're salespeople. I have to email them every week to get them to give me their commission numbers. They're salespeople, right? How do we approach that? Like, what's the mindset that we should take whenever we have this person who's not performing? Oh, but they're salespeople, Ben. They're gonna bounce back. Have you observed that, or is that
Yeah.
an observation on my own?
No, I think you're right. I mean, the other piece of it too that comes to mind for me is like, well, if a salesperson is kind of decent at their job, they're also kind of able to like talk their way out of things. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we had a really bad month there. What happened? Wow, man. Well, here, this is crazy. Like, you're never gonna believe this. Like, I called 100 people and 0 answered like, it was just nuts. You know what I mean? Like, salespeople are good at, kind of molding, spinning is probably the better word. So I think that's true. And yeah, that can be kind of difficult to navigate. But I think ultimately part of it goes back to what we already talked about, which is the expectation setting. And just,
Mhm.
I actually find that when there's an issue like that, where you in your head were thinking a salesperson should be doing this one thing, but you didn't really clearly articulate that or kind of hammer that home, there may be misalignment from the beginning that exists, right? And that can be the problem. So I think being really clear about what the expectations are up front is really important. I do think there's an element of, and it's a tricky balance, right? Like, when you think about somebody in an operations role, right? They've got a process that they're working, and
Mhm.
it is fairly black and white to be able to see, okay, like, are we completing the tasks that we need to complete in the time that we need to complete them? of course, there can be like culture issues and things like that that can come in that would be reasons why you wouldn't let somebody in a position like that go. But with sales, like you do have to acknowledge that no matter the results are out of our hands, right? Like you're gonna have months where, yeah, like the cards just don't land the way that you expected them to. And so I think you have to be reasonable, right? And
Mhm.
for someone that's not a salesperson or sales minded, that can be tricky. So I certainly sympathize with why it feels tricky. But, I think as much as possible, like you have to stay connected because motivation is so much a part of this for anybody, right? Whether they're doing outbound or they're just even just working inbound leads. Like you can't completely go hands off, right? And so
Absolutely.
yeah, there's not a great answer, but at least in my experience, you know, I think you really want to understand, is this person still invested in what we're doing here?
Right.
Are they trying to get better, or are they sort of
Are they checked
disinterested?
out?
Yeah, checked out.
Hmm. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. And I think on the flip side of that is giving your salesperson too much a gray area to where you're throwing different ideas at them and there is not
Yes.
the consistency. That's what popped into my mind whenever you said on the ops side, we know black and white what's happening. In the sales side, we're like, oh, try this, try this, try this, try this, try this.
Yeah.
And the salesperson is, I don't want to say confused, but just directionless. They don't have a clear direction in what to go in. And that can also, I think, affect the results and affect the relationship there between our results that we want and our salesperson's desire, effort to show up and do the best they can if they don't know
Yeah.
what even is expected of them.
Yeah. I think that's an excellent point too, Kristen. It's like one, you have to commit to a strategy for a long period of time, right?
Mhm.
If you call Furbo leads for a week, you don't get anything out of that. And then the next week you're like, oh, well, now we need to do this. Like you don't actually know if this other thing you tried didn't work because you didn't give it enough time.
Right.
So I think that's definitely true. But I also think that, like, just as a basic principle, if we expect people to get good at something, having them divide their attention between 5, 10 different things we're asking them to do, they're never going to get really good at one of those things. They're going to be like
Correct.
mildly good to bad at all of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think you bring up a really good point there. And again, like it comes back to expectation setting. Like, are you setting reasonable expectations for your salesperson? So Kristen, one of the things that you and I have talked a lot about in the past that I think is worth hitting on, because I think this kind of covers process as well as people, is the discovery process, right? And if I think
Mhm.
back to the example you were giving of, somebody sending a PMA out too quickly before someone's really ready, in my mind, at least, a lot of that comes down to discovery. I'm curious, as you've coached salespeople and BDMs, like, how have you found discovery at, let's say, at a poor level is approach versus getting someone to a point where they really are doing true good discovery and the results that come from making changes there?
Yeah. I think that start with the poor side there is lack of questions and not just the baseline questions, but not being able to go deeper on some of the questions that we're giving. Staying very surface level of
Reasonable.
just like checking the boxes of what's the property's address, when is it going to be vacant, when are you looking to make a decision? Like those questions there, if you feel like that's enough discovery work, then you're not doing enough there for our people because I believe that great discovery happens whenever we're asking thoughtful questions. Like, yes, we start with the basics. Tell me a little bit about the property. Tell me a little bit about you. What are the goals that you have? Then you need to ask why. Why are those your goals? Why is this why is this the number that you're looking to get to understand their full story? Because you're not their first call. Quite honestly, you're probably their fifth or sixth call that they have made. And they've answered all of these questions. So they're in just kind of like that pattern of, I'm just going to answer the questions. I know how to answer these questions. So we need to insert some pattern interrupts there to be able to have a full understanding of what is happening. So I think that really the missed opportunity in discovery is not going deep enough in asking the questions and staying very surface level because you want to get to your pitch. You want to
Mm.
get to the next step, but you're not able to really pivot into that next step because we don't know enough about our person. We're pitching the wrong part of our service. If we're have somebody who's asking us a lot of questions about tenant placement, but we don't know why, we don't know that they had a really bad tenant live in their property. They had to go through an eviction. They had to go through all these things. And we gloss over that in our pitch, we're not actually connecting with them.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we have enough discovery work and we go deep enough there of asking the questions to then be able to sell them the right part of our service. And so in our actual discovery call, I think maybe like 15 to 20 minutes maximum. And probably 75% of that should be asking questions to them. The last bit of that is you telling them how you're going to solve all of those problems that you just heard and then setting up the next step. And so I think that for me, whenever I hear amateur, I suppose, discovery work is just asking those basic questions and then going into, and so then what we do is we will find you a great tenant, we'll do this, we'll do that, and just start going through a script almost of the pitch is where I see the difference in the amateur side. And then the pros, great, tell me more about you. Oh, that's interesting. Why this? Wow, I heard you say this. What did you mean by that? Or so I would always just take notes while people were talking.
Mhm.
And if they had weird inflections on a word or like in a sentence, I would circle that on my paper.
Yeah.
And then I would continue listening to them talk and I'd say, okay, I completely understand, but I want to go back to something that you said. You mentioned this. Could you tell me a little bit more about this piece here? That is where we are engaged in a conversation and we're not playing mental chess trying to get to the next place. We're present in that conversation and we're listening and we're responding to that.
Gosh, that's really good. I love that. Trying to pick up on people's tone or, if you're talking face to face, their posture, their eye contact, like that's the next level stuff right there. That's good.
Yeah, that's where I see that's what separates it there of the people that do discovery work and the people that discover, and the people that go in deep and figure out the next steps. But I'm curious from you as you look at discovery calls, what's your approach? Like whenever you're doing discovery and how do you teach that to somebody? Because that's where I think I kind of struggle sometimes is how do I convey this across to another person of how to go in and do this discovery work?
Well, I think some of it is mindset, right? Like if you view your sales conversations as like an opportunity to close, an opportunity to just rattle off the things that are so great about your company. Hey, I haven't closed many deals this month. I really need this one to close. I think that sort of stuff comes through. And so the phrase that comes to mind for me is genuine curiosity, right? And, this is something that I've talked about a decent amount probably on here, but I just think that your whole posture and approach to the folks that you're talking to, if you have genuine curiosity about this other person, you're not going to say things like, we have great customer service. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't ultimately matter if you don't know what matters to them. I think the other piece of it too, Kristen, and you brought this up, talking about, hey, you might be like their third, fourth, fifth company that they're talking to. Everybody talks about their pricing. Everybody talks about their customer service. It doesn't really matter that you have in-house maintenance unless you're connecting it to something that matters to them, right?
Exactly.
The example that comes to mind is oh, what's a brand new house? So that's great you have in-house maintenance, but I don't expect a whole lot of maintenance, right? That sort of thing. So I think ultimately what is valuable to your prospect is only valuable because it solves a problem that they have or a need that they have. You having over 100 years of collective property management experience inherently doesn't mean anything to your prospect. They just hear that and it's noise. It's in one ear, out the other ear. It doesn't mean anything, right? But a good example might be, hey, I worked with this property management company. I had a really negative experience because every time I called, I got thrown into this phone tree and it was really hard for me to get in touch with. I didn't have a dedicated point of contact. Okay, well, now talking about your approach, your unique approach to customer service, that
Mhm.
actually will resonate with that person. Hey, actually, Kristen, here at Smith Property Management, the way that we've structured our team is you have a dedicated point of contact. You have a property manager that is assigned to your property. Obviously, like assuming you do you don't lie about your corporate structure. But I think even then you could probably speak to the issue that they were having.
Right.
So now, like, we've gone from great customer service. Okay, well, everybody says that, to we are going to give you a person that you can always reach out to. Like, if you have a maintenance issue or you have a concern about something, tenant's not paying, you have questions about your owner statements, it's one person. You've got their email address,
Right.
you've got their office number, you can call them, right? So now you've created real value for someone. You're really moving the needle and you're not wasting your time talking about things that don't really matter, right? And
Absolutely.
my mind just always goes back to, like, for those inbound leads that are calling you, like, they want to know what your pricing is, right? Maybe they looked at
Right.
your website, maybe they didn't, whatever. Like, they want to know what your pricing is. Well, if they're calling around to every single property management company in town, and the question they're asking is, what's your pricing? Who are they going to go with, Kristen?
Cheapest.
The cheapest, right? So you've kind of gone from an opportunity to learn more about someone and their situation, what they find valuable, to now you're really just an order taker, which is like,
Right.
yeah, I'm shopping around for tires, right? Like, who's got the cheapest tires? Okay, great. That's my decision. Like, to me, that's not even really selling. That's just,
It's
I
a
don't,
race to the bottom.
it's a race to the bottom. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think to put a bow on my very long answer to you, because this is something that I love talking about. It's really trying to understand and having that mindset going into every sales conversation of, I want to understand what's going on with this person and if there's an opportunity for us to help them, right?
Yeah. And I think that feels counterintuitive
Mhm.
to a lot of sales scripting, or just I don't know. It may feel counterintuitive to a lot of people
Mhm.
because you think that the sale is the pitch and you think that the sale is the close. But to me, you can't pitch or close unless you have done deep and true discovery work. Because if you don't know what you're pitching or you don't know how to tailor that to someone, it's going to fall flat. You could buy the best sales language in the entire world, but if you don't have the ability to tailor that to the person that you are talking to, it's worthless. You've wasted a whole lot of money doing that, because that's not where the magic happens. That's not where the true salespeople come in and do great work. It's just words and you're just reading off of a script. So to me, really flipping that and making sure that the discovery happens is the way that you increase your closing percentage, is the way that you better your pitch, is the way that you get everything that you want to do, because you're tailoring that service to that person. So you're in service to them, not to yourself. And when you're focused on getting to the pitch and just being able to talk about your pricing, that's selfish. You are just talking about you, and that's not going to land with a lot of people, because then what they're listening for is who is the cheapest. However, I believe that people will pay more money for a service that is valuable.
Mhm.
People will spend more money on something if they know that the value that they're getting in return is worth it.
That's right.
And so that's why for me, I don't like discounts, Ben. I don't like to discount services for anything. We should not be discounting because we're devaluing ourselves. So making sure that we understand the discovery. I don't care if your management percentage is 14%. If the value is there, you can sell that. You can sell whatever your management rate is as long as the value is there behind it. But the value is not the same for everyone. What I think is valuable is different than what you think is valuable, than what the other person thinks is valuable. So you have to figure out and do the discovery work to figure out, how am I going to sell this to this person? It's a game. And that's my favorite way to think about it is a game. What does this person want, and how can I tailor my sales pitch to this person?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And I would, I think you could make the argument, I think both of us would, that if you're looking at your process and you're looking at how many people move from that initial conversation to, staying engaged, having an additional call, requesting a PMA sent, signing that PMA, everything that follows discovery, I can almost guarantee you, if you're seeing low percentages, PMA sent to sign, people even, getting to the point of sending a PMA, the issue more than likely is that we didn't do enough in discovery. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's exceptions, right? Oh, actually, I found out I'm not moving for work, and so I don't need to run like that. Sure, that stuff happens, but most of the time, it's a result of we didn't do the work in discovery, and I think the best salespeople take ownership of that rather than say,
yes,
oh, well, nobody's getting back to me. What could I have done differently in my process? If I felt like I had a great conversation with this person, but now they're ghosting me, what could I have done differently? Was there, could I have done a better job establishing next steps? Do I really have an answer for what are the problems they're facing? What are the challenges they have? What is their timeline? I mean, that's another thing too. It's like you have to ask people what their timeline is. Like if you don't do that, then that's basic level discovery, I would say.
Absolutely. All right, Ben. So as we start to round out this episode, talking through a lot of different things, should I just dump more leads on my dumpster fire of a process? No, right? What KPI should we be looking at? How do we really come in and we help to manage, work through with our BDM? Do we have the right one in place? What are your final thoughts? What do you want to give to the people walking away from this episode?
Yeah, I think what I want people to come away with is you need to first ask yourself the question, like if things aren't going well, is that actually true? Back to what we said first, which is having a forecast, looking at prior year results. You feeling like things aren't going well can sometimes be deceptive. So first is like, are we actually in the position that I think we're in? The second thing is really getting granular into your process, into the data that's available to you to understand where there's a problem and then move forward from there, right? When things aren't going well, do not think in extremes. That's when it's time to dig in and really look closely, not make sweeping changes without all of the information. So that would just be my caution to people. There's any number of things that could be going on. There could be 20 reasons why you're not where you want to be, but don't make decisions that aren't supported by actual data and real conversations, honest conversations with the people involved. And if you're the salesperson, honest conversations with yourself about the job that you're doing. So that's my take. Anything you would add or disagree with there?
No, nothing I would disagree with ever, Ben. I feel like we're on the same page more times than not. But I think that something that you said in previous episodes, I'm going to pair it with something we said here. So yes, you need to know your numbers and know where we're at and be able to pinpoint where we're at on the roadmap. But then also at the same time, remember that you are not your numbers, right? First, we want to look at process and then we want to look at people. So know where we're at, but don't immediately go to blame the people that are carrying out your sales process. Now, whether that is you or that is somebody that you are managing, we don't want to go blame the person first. Let's take a look at the process, figure out what we need to tweak within the process, set expectations, and then we can make a pretty firm decision on, is this the right person in the right seat? So I would say know your numbers, but remember, you are not your numbers. You are more than your numbers, and everything can be fixed as long as we go and follow the process and go through it.
There you go. I love it. That's awesome, Kristen. This has been a great conversation, and I'm sure our folks listening will be able to take away something from it.
All right, Ben. Well, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure recording Outbound on air with you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch y'all in the next episode.